I was crouched by my flower bed, fingers deep in the soil, when something smacked the side of my neck. At first, I thought it was a twig until I looked down and saw a half-eaten granola bar lying in the dirt. The chocolate drizzle glistened under the morning sun, right next to a snapped sunflower stalk. And then, as if on cue, the sound of a revving engine pierced the silence. I didn't have to look up to know it was her. Danielle, our neighborhood's self-appointed HOA enforcer. Not elected, not hired, just volunteered herself into the role with the zeal of a dictator in yoga pants. Her SUV screeched past, tires grinding the edge of my garden into mulch. Again, my marigolds, which I had just replanted 2 days earlier, were now nothing more than yellow confetti in her tire tracks. That was the last straw. I wasn't just some hobbyist gardener. Before I retired, I worked in military engineering, designing perimeter defense systems in places you've only seen on grainy news footage. After 2 deployments and 15 years of high-stakes paranoia, I traded in my Kevlar for compost and started tending to my little patch of earth. Gardening gave me peace. Danielle was tearing that piece apart. At first, it was small. She printed her own HOA letterhead and left warnings on people's windshields. She called my marigolds a visual obstruction and threatened fines for extending beyond regulation length, a rule she clearly made up on the spot. I laughed it off, even waved to her once. Mistake. The next morning, I found a deep tire groove right through my eastern row. 10 sunflowers. Snapped like cheap pencils. I tried confronting her. Caught her coming back from her gym, clad in hot pink leggings and mirrored sunglasses that looked like they were stolen off a spacesuit. I was polite. Told her my garden was within legal bounds. Showed her the property lines. Her response? Maybe plant something less crushable. Like plastic. She drove off with a smirk and a flick of her middle finger, and rolled over the tulips on her way out. I filed a complaint with the HOA board. Brought photo evidence. Time-stamped video from my porch cam. Danielle had beat me to it. Claimed my garden was a hazard and accused me of planting unlicensed shrubbery. The board, full of spineless fence-sitters, told me they'd look into it. Translation, we're scared of Danielle. That night, I sat on my porch with a cold beer and a hot fury, staring at my devastated flower bed. Then I remembered something. A prototype I once worked on, pressure-triggered ground deterrence. Nothing deadly, just persuasive. I dusted off my old plans and got to work. Over the next 48 hours, I constructed a hidden spike system. Retractable, rubber-coated, triggered by vehicle weight. Pedestrian safe, but guaranteed to ruin a morning drive. I camouflaged it beneath a fresh layer of mulch, replanted the marigolds, and waited. At precisely 7:13 the next morning, her SUV made contact. There was a crunch, a hiss, and then a yelp. One front tire collapsed like a deflated ego. Danielle jumped out, screaming sabotage. I offered to call a tow. She threw a tantrum so loud the neighbor's dog started howling. When the HOA board came sniffing around, I showed them the footage high def. Slow-mo. Time-stamped. Danielle's SUV swerving deliberately over the garden edge. Latte in hand. One board member, Bill, nearly choked on his gum. Another muttered something about maybe giving each other space. But it wasn't over. A week later, I received a violation notice taped to my door. It accused me of installing unauthorized defensive modifications. The phrasing was so dramatic I half expected it to be signed by a Bond villain. Instead, it bore Danielle's new title, Acting HOA President. Apparently, Bill had resigned due to health reasons. That's when I started digging, literally and figuratively. I reviewed HOA expenditure records. Turns out, Danielle had been funneling funds into a landscaping company called Green Nest Services. No address, no phone, just AP. Oh, box tied to her cousin in Nevada. Thousands in invoices for seasonal beautification and soil revitalization. Not a single receipt. Not one before and after photo. It wasn't about my garden. It was about money. Control. If she got rid of my flower bed, she could justify using HOA funds to fix it and get her cut. I compiled everything. Sent a dossier to Linda, my neighbor across the street. A forensic accountant with a grudge and a sharp eye. She texted back one word, jackpot. To keep Danielle distracted, I expanded my garden, added solar lights, arches, even a ceramic frog with a sign that read, "This garden bites." Danielle nearly choked on rage when she saw it. I caught her stomping around one night with a flashlight. She triggered my backup Troppa harmless dye pack that exploded blue and green over her hoodie. The next morning, my inbox was flooded with screenshots from the neighborhood group chat. Danielle, covered in streaks of paint, flailing around like a smurf with a vendetta. Her SUV was at the mechanic again. HOA members began asking questions. Someone filed a petition to audit finances. Another called for her removal. Danielle tried to rally her supporters, but got radio silence. She claimed I deep-faked the footage, said the dye pack was terrorism, demanded I apologize. I didn't respond. My attorney did. Then came the tipping point. A news crew showed up. Turns out, someone leaked the footage. They interviewed me among the flowers. I kept it simple, honest, calm. They titled the segment, "The Garden That Fought Back." By the end of the week, Danielle was suspended pending investigation. A third-party auditor was brought in. Green Nest was exposed as a shell company. Danielle's cousin had been laundering HOA money. The board froze her access and notified authorities. The final blow came quietly. A former board member emailed me an apology, admitting Danielle had bullied them into silence with threats and falsified citations. He thanked me, said I gave the neighborhood courage. Last weekend, we hosted the first annual Bloom and barbecue. Neighbors brought drinks. Kids played near the marigolds. And someone passed out cookies shaped like tiny sunflowers. Linda laughed with the woman who once refused to wave. The neighborhood was alive again. Danielle's house went dark. A for sale sign appeared. The new owners tore out her cameras and planted tomatoes. I sat on my porch that night, the wind rustling through untouched flowers, and thought about balance. Danielle tried to crush what she couldn't control, but in the end, all she did was help something stronger grow. Right before I went in for the night, I looked at the new sign at the garden's edge. It read, "Smile for the bees." And the cameras. Justice never smelled so sweet.